Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Battles continue to rage in Libya as the humanitarian crisis escalates. Bahraini and Yemeni oppositions reject government concessions, and Oman protests turn violent. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
قال شهود عيان الثوار في مدينة مصراتة بغربي ليبيا يخوضون مع
Eyewitnesses said that revolutionaries in Misurata city in western Libya are continuously attacking and retreating throughout the city. They said protesters fended off an attack launched by Gaddafi's security forces. They added that the revolutionaries are maintaining control over the city, the airport, and a large part of the military base at the airport. A resident said that at least 50 civilians were killed in Misurata when Gaddafi's loyalist forces bombed the area with heavy artillery. In Tripoli, hundreds protested against the Gaddafi regime. Security forces dispersed them by opening fire in the air.
Every day, the revolution in Libya gets closer to the capital. After Gaddafi lost control of the entire eastern region of Libya, the western cities are now falling one after another. The revolutionaries managed to fend off an attack on Misurata city, located 200 kilometers east of the capital. Reports say that they brought down a warplane and captured its crew. Zawiya also seems to be making Gaddafi nervous. The city, located 50 kilometers west of the capital, fell completely under the control of revolutionaries after a violent battle. These images show one site after the battle and are among many images that show evidence of what took place. But it seems that the matter has not ended yet. The revolutionaries are preparing for a new round of battles, as reports say about 2,000 Gaddafi loyalist fighters besieged the city and are getting ready to attack. This was in the west. In the east, the resigned Minister of Justice, Mustafa Abdul Jalil, said that the formation of a transitional national council will not be officially announced until all of Libya is liberated. This comes as a response to concerns that the formation of the council may affect the country's unity. A police squad in Ajdabiya announced to stand by the revolutionaries.
We, the police squad, including officers, officials and employees, announce that we fully join the people of the peaceful February 17th revolution. We announce our commitment to protect people's lives in this region and do all we can to serve them.
Meanwhile, the living conditions deteriorated due to food shortages. Foreigners have evacuated Libya through various transportation means. Nearly 50,000 Egyptians crossed the border to Tunisia, creating a refugee problem for the Tunisian Authority. In the face of all this, Gaddafi and those left by his side seem to be waiting for the last chapter of this story, a story that is written by the Libyan people alone.
In Zantan city, hundreds of protesters took to the streets demanding to topple Muammar al-Gaddafi's regime.
ليبيا هادئة تماما ولا تشهد أي اضطرابات. هذا ما أكده العقيد.
Libyan leader Colonel Muammar Gaddafi said in a telephone interview with Serbian Pink TV that his country is completely calm, dismissing any reports of unrest. The Libyan leader also accused al-Qaeda of supporting what he referred to as terrorist gangs responsible for the bloodshed in Libya. He added that the Libyan government is only dealing with a small group of rebels. He also said that UN Security Council sanctions against Libya are null and void.
وإلى بنغازي شرق ليبيا التي أصبحت خارج سلطات العقيد معمر القذافي.
Meanwhile, 2 French planes carrying humanitarian aid are due to arrive at the eastern Libyan city of Benghazi, which is no longer under Colonel Muammar Gaddafi's authority. French Prime Minister François Fillon said the 2 airplanes carrying humanitarian and medical aid are part of a massive operation to help Libyans in what he referred to as liberated territories.
بحسب فيون. مناشدة للمجتمع الدولي أطلقتها المفوضية العليا لشؤون اللاجئين
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, urged the international community to provide substantial support for the governments of Tunisia and Egypt in a bid to counter what it referred to as a humanitarian emergency. The UN said over 100,000 refugees have fled Libya in the past week to neighboring Egypt and Tunisia. The UN said a humanitarian crisis is unfolding along both countries' borders with Libya due to the lack of shelter and food supplies, and especially because Egypt and Tunisia are both still witnessing unrest. The Tunisian army set up a refugee camp along its border with Libya to help the displaced and stranded. Meanwhile, Egyptian workers in Libya called on their government to send them relief and to help bring them home.
The U.S. military has announced that it is deploying naval and air forces around Libya. A Pentagon spokesman saying various contingency plans are considered to be able to provide options and flexibility once decisions are made. The move comes as Western countries mull military intervention. One option on the table is using NATO air power to impose a no-fly zone over Libya. Such a step, however, requires a UN approval. This as Libya's Air Force jets attacked ammunition depots in 2 separate locations south of Benghazi. Fighting flared Monday in Misurata near capital Tripoli, where the protesters have shot down a helicopter and captured its crew. A brutal crackdown by the regime on opposition protests that began nearly 2 weeks ago has killed an estimated 2,000 people so far. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has voiced concern about challenges that come with political transitions in the Arab world. Clinton saying these changes can be chaotic and that the process of transition should be protected. She was addressing a UN Human Rights Council meeting in Switzerland. Clinton also called for further international steps to hold the regime of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi accountable. Meanwhile, the White House has announced that exile is an option that would satisfy its demands for Gaddafi to go. Spokesman Jay Carney, however, fell short of saying whether the U.S. is prepared to facilitate any departure from Libya for Gaddafi. The European Union has agreed to impose sanctions on Libya. This after the UN Security Council's call this weekend for punitive measures against Libya's longtime ruler, Muammar Gaddafi, and his regime. EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton says the bloc has also agreed to implement UN sanctions to pressure Gaddafi's regime. Ashton made the comments on the sidelines of a UN Human Rights Council session in Geneva. The sanctions include a visa ban and asset freeze on Gaddafi and his close allies, as well as an embargo on arms sales and non-lethal equipment. Germany has also called for an international freeze on all payments to Libya for 60 days in order to deprive Gaddafi of means to oppress the protesters.
Rule of law and to foster. I think it's a very good gesture to the dictator in Libya that the international community stands united. We agree that we need concrete and clear and strong sanctions because this war against the own people by the dictator Gaddafi is of course not acceptable. I welcome that the international community acts united, and I think this is a clear message to the dictator and his family.
Meanwhile, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has announced a preliminary probe of possible crimes against humanity committed in Libya. Luis Moreno Ocampo also warned Libyan army commanders of their responsibilities.
دعا ولي العهد البحريني الأمير سلمان بن حمد آل خليفة إلى البدء الفوري بالحوار الوطني.
Bahrain's Crown Prince Salman bin Hamid bin Isa Al Khalifa called for immediately beginning a national dialogue and putting an end to the disruption of people's lives. He said that measures taken in the last several days have created relative calm so that daily life can return to normal in the kingdom. This comes as hundreds of people in Manama demonstrated in front of Parliament, demanding to dismantle the Shura Council. Protesters affiliated with the Shiite opposition shouted slogans, calling on King Hamad bin Khalifa Thani and his family to leave. These protests took place after Bahrain announced the reshuffle of the cabinet. Opposition leaders considered the reshuffle to be inadequate.
إلى العراق حيث تعهد رئيس الوزراء العراقي نور المالكي بمحاسبة الفساد الإداري.
Iraqi Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki pledged to investigate government corruption and directly hold every minister responsible for the corruption in their ministry. At a press conference in Baghdad, held to discuss measures the government is determined to take in response to the protesters' demands, al-Maliki vowed to speed up the passing of the economic reform bill. He called on Parliament to conduct early elections in the provincial councils and to dismantle any municipal council that received citizen complaints.
التي يشكو منها المواطنون. أغلق محتجون عمانيون يطالبون بإصلاحات.
Omani protesters demanding political reforms blocked the roads leading to the main exportation port and oil refinery in Sohar, northwest of the capital, Muscat. This came after 6 people were killed in clashes with police. The Omani authorities had denied this figure.
For 3 consecutive days, protests and confrontations continued in the Omani city of Sohar. Sunday's death toll remains disputed after Omani authorities denied that 6 people were killed in confrontations, as some reports stated. But today the rallies spread, and it was reported that the supermarket was set on fire as hundreds protested.
Hundreds of people participated in rallies in several cities in Providence, such as Sohar, Sur, Salalah, and Muscat. The people's demands are legitimate. They are calling for reform and for a constitution created for the people to be the foundation of authority.
Protesters demanding political reform blocked roads leading to the main exportation port and oil refinery. Security forces are trying to block the major roads connecting Sohar and the capital of Muscat. Activists say this was an attempt to isolate the protests and prevent them from expanding. Wa'el Hajar, BBC.
Official government sources this morning disproved what was mentioned by some media, that 6 people were killed and regrettable incidents took place in the Wilaya of Sohar in the Al-Batina region yesterday. The sources confirmed that these news were baseless and lack credibility, and there was only 1 fatality in these incidents. His Excellency Dr. Ahmed bin Mohammed Al-Saidi, Minister of Health, stated that the fatality, as per information came from Sohar Hospital, was due to a rubber bullet unfortunately sustained in a vital point. But other injuries were benign, and most of them happened due to stampede among demonstrators. Meanwhile, citizens from the Wilaya of Sohar expressed their disapproval and dismay to what had happened in the Wilaya, calling for these actions to stop immediately, adding that these are not in the interest of anybody, and on the contrary, that people should protect and preserve their gains of both public and private properties.
قال الرئيس اليمني علي عبد الله صالح أنه على استعداد لتشكيل حكومة.
Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh said he is ready to form a national unity government within hours if the opposition submits names for ministerial posts. The opposition rejected the call and renewed its commitment to the Yemeni people's demand to topple the regime. This comes as protests continue and spread to many cities after being limited to the capital Sana'a. The people are demanding the removal of Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh.
تشهد الحكومة اليمنية ضغوطا متزايدة عليها من قبل المطالبين
The Yemeni government is under increasing pressure from those demanding secession in the south and those demanding the resignation of the government and regime change in the north. The matter was made worse after one of the most prominent tribal leaders resigned from his post in the party and 2 additional tribes joined the opposition. Demonstrations against the Yemeni regime continue, especially in the south, where 8 people were injured in confrontations with police. In addition, 5 activists, including a former diplomat, were arrested. Thousands of students demonstrated in the city of Matla in the Hadramaut province, demanding to topple the regime. Protesters gathered in front of a police station in the city were met by security forces who attempted to disperse them, leading to confrontations that injured 5 people. Other Hadramaut cities witnessed demonstrations in which thousands participated. Thousands reiterated their opposition to the Yemeni president in front of Sana'a University, demanding he relinquish power. They held banners with anti-government slogans and called for change in a country enduring extreme poverty and unemployment.
Since 1977, there have been 8 different leaders in the U.S. We've had the same leader, and he serves only himself.
وفي الشمال يواصل المحتجون اعتصامهم في صنعاء وتعز.
In the north, demonstrators continue their protest in Sana'a and Tal, demanding to topple the regime. They announced their rejection of the dialogue proposed by the Yemeni president. In the northern Sada province, tens of thousands of Houthis demonstrated in Sahel, Haidan, and Razeh governorates demanding to topple the regime. As for the possible scenarios that could end the crisis in Yemen, observers believe that despite Yemen's complex reality, the country is capable of dealing with events similar to those witnessed in Tunisia, Egypt, and even Libya. Another scenario for change in Yemen might be a so-called cocktail of all these events combined, especially in light of the ruling regime's obstinacy in meeting the demands of the masses and sparing the nation the scourge of stubbornness and arrogance.
Staying in the region, 2 senior U.S. senators visiting Cairo said the Egyptian revolution that toppled President Hosni Mubarak demonstrates that change in the Middle East is possible without extremism. Former presidential candidate Senator John McCain of Arizona and one-time candidate for Vice President Joe Lieberman of Connecticut toured Tahrir Square, the epicenter of the people's uprising. 2 American lawmakers met with Prime Minister Netanyahu before traveling to Egypt. McCain told CNN that Netanyahu wanted to encourage Washington to support the democratic revolutions taking place in the region. McCain also said Israelis are confident they can do business better with democracies than with dictatorships, even though the situation remains unpredictable at the moment. McCain also stressed that the U.S. stands ready to help Egypt on the road to democracy.
But our message that we will bring back to the Senate of the United States is that what is happening is exciting and challenging, and the United States' role is to help and assist, not to dictate, but to advise and consent, advise and help in being of assistance as this dramatic and incredible transition is taking place.
Well, a documentary film just released on Iran called Iranium utilizes rare footage, archival news reports, and interviews with experts and politicians. All this in a bid to expose the actions and intentions of Iran's leaders, as well as the response by the United States over the past 31 years. Before we hear from the director, here's a short clip from that movie.
Have often labeled the Iranian regime a sponsor of terror and a violator of human rights. Yet, for more than 30 years, America has misread the guiding principles of the Islamic Republic. What happens when a regime that openly desires the destruction of nations...
IBA's Ella Wagalanter spoke with Alex Treman, the writer and director of the film.
Well, the purpose was to explore the ideology that actually guides Iran leaders. We know that there is a nuclear weapons program that they've been developing. But what is really guiding that program? That's what we explore in the movie, as well as the history of that regime over 30 years.
And what did you find?
Well, we found that there's a very extreme ideology that actually guides Iran's leaders dating back to the revolution in 1979. They talk about exporting jihad throughout the world. Their constitution, which they canonized in 1979, talks about the establishment of a universal holy government and the downfall of all others. And that government has been using terror as a means of accomplishing its ideology over the past 30 years.
Isn't this something we've known all along?
Well, I think in the Middle East now, with regards to Iran, there's this sort of slow boil in the sense that the situation keeps getting hotter and hotter slowly, and we don't necessarily feel that the situation's heating up. When in fact, when you take a look at the entire situation as it's developed over the last 3 decades, it's extraordinarily serious.
And now when you look at what's going on in the Middle East and the revolutions taking place across the Middle East and in Iran, what's your sense of it all?
Well, first of all, with regards to Iran, it's the best possible situation imaginable. We've got to do everything that we can to help the democratic movement in Iran to take their country back from their tyrannical leaders.
Our today's figure is Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. My colleague, Lara Jeha, reports.
He is the most famous son of the Libyan leader. Libyans saw Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi as a promising young man before he made his first speech after the revolution started. Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi was born on June 25, 1972, in Bab al-Aziziyah of Tripoli. He is the oldest son of Muammar al-Gaddafi's second wife, Safiya Farkash, and the second oldest of Gaddafi's 8 sons. Although he does not hold an official position in the government, he was considered the most likely candidate to succeed his father. Shortly before the Libyan revolution began, his headshot was going to be printed on Libyan currency.
درس سيف الإسلام المرحلة الابتدائية والإعدادية في مدارس الحي الشعبي.
Saif al-Islam finished his elementary and secondary education in inner-city schools and went to high school at the state-run Ali Warith School. He then enrolled in Fatah University in Tripoli and majored in architectural engineering. He graduated in 1995 and obtained the title Engineer Saif. 5 years later, Saif al-Islam continued his education in Vienna, Austria, where he majored in business management and received a diploma from the International Business School. He finished his higher education with a PhD from the London School of Economics.
سيف الإسلام يتحدث الإنجليزية والألمانية وشيئا من
Saif al-Islam speaks English, German, and some French. As a single man, Saif al-Islam takes great care of his appearance, so much so that his picture has appeared on the front pages of several European and American newspapers and magazines. His favorite hobbies include raising tigers, deep-sea fishing, falconry, and horse riding.
الصيد في أعماق البحار وصيد الصقور وركوب الخيل. ولسيف الإسلام اهتمامات فنية كبيرة.
Saif al-Islam is also very interested in the arts and is nicknamed the artist Saif al-Islam. He is a professional painter and has had numerous art exhibits in various countries, the latest of which was entitled The Desert is Not Silent at the Moscow Art School. The exhibition showcased about 50 of his paintings as well as Romanian art and ancient Libyan art.
إلى جانب قطع فنية رومانية وليبية قديمة. وعلى صغر سنه دخل سيف الإسلام الحياة السياسية الليبية باكراً فكان المفاوض.
Saif al-Islam began his political career in Libya at an early age. In 1988, he participated in the negotiations over compensations to families of victims of the Lockerbie plane hijack incident in Scotland. In 1997, he founded a charity group called Gaddafi International Organization for Charity and Development.
عام 2000 عندما فاوضت مؤسسته من أجل الإفراج عن رهائن غربيين محتجزين لدى مجموعة من المتطرفين الإسلاميين.
In 2000, he made an international appearance when his organization negotiated for the release of Western hostages held by a group of Islamist extremists in the Philippines. Saif al-Islam is the owner of the first private TV network in Libya.
عام 2007 في إطلاق أول محطة تلفزة خاصة وأول صحيفتين خاصتين في البلاد. ولكن
He campaigned for opening Jazeera TV for private media networks, and in August 2007, 2007, he succeeded in launching the first private television channel and the first 2 private newspapers in the country. In 2009, however, Saif al-Islam's efforts became futile when the Libyan government, with orders from his father Muammar al-Gaddafi, revoked the 2 newspapers, nationalized the private TV station, and shut down the private media networks owned by his company, the God Company. Gaddafi's sons, especially Saif al-Islam, are known for their public relationships. Recently, newspapers around the world, or more specifically, Israeli papers, made a big deal about his romantic relationship with blonde Israeli actress Orly Feinerman. One of her closest friends was quoted saying that Orly travels to see Saif al-Islam very often, and the 2 meet secretly in Italy, arriving in separate cars. The friend added that the 2 are in love and talk about the possibility of marriage. He added that he was worried she might even convert to Islam to marry Saif al-Islam.
في الأعوام القليلة الماضية ظهر سيف الإسلام.
In the past few years, Saif al-Islam has appeared as the face of Libya, a friend to the West, and Libya's symbol for achieving its hopes of political transparency and reform. He was depicted as a young urban man who opposed his father's way of ruling. He has been known to criticize the Libyan political regime, demanding a shift from what he calls the Libya of the revolution to the Libyan state. He also called for establishing a solid constitution for Libya.
كل هذه الأقنعة الإنسانية والإصلاحية الراقية سقطت.
Saif al-Islam's disguise as a humanitarian and noble reformist was revealed in his speech at the beginning of the Libyan revolution, in which he threatened to use the kind of violence that he so fervently denounced in the past. While he doesn't hold any official title other than the colonel's son, he was given the right to address the nation and warned the Libyan people of a civil war.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.